What's up, guys? Arash Rahbar here with my good friend Kabir. We're doing another Q&A for you guys. We did one a while back, and we've been getting a lot more questions and a lot of requests to do another one. So what better time? We're 9 weeks and change out of the 2018 Mr. Olympia. I'm smiling because I'm excited. I made a lot of changes and can't wait to show you guys all in 9 weeks. I'll let Kabir take it away. It's also questions compiled from YouTube and Instagram. We put together some of the most popular ones and the ones that we thought you guys could benefit from.
What I noticed though, a lot of you guys ask questions. Do follow his page and check the channel because he's covered a lot of topics in detail. So when you ask questions, make sure you check some of his old videos. He's covered literally a lot of these questions. So since we just mentioned Olympia, I'm going to start with what's your new training split for Olympia and what's your focus for this Olympia?
Well, as I told you we were talking about before, after the Arnold, my main focus was legs and back. So if you guys are training every single body part, your food, your sleep, your rest is going to get divided into all those body parts. Hypothetically, let's say someone is training only legs, 2 days a week legs, not training anything else. Legs are going to grow at a really fast pace because their training is stressful. So if I train legs today and then tomorrow I'm training back versus not training at all, the rest of nutrients will go to my legs instead of going to back or chest or whatever. So what I did was I just trained chest and back twice a week each, and I broke up my back, lower back, upper back, and then I had one day where I did chest, shoulders, and arms. It wasn't a huge day because I didn't do a lot of volume. My chest, shoulders, and arms, of course I want to improve my whole physique, but I gave my elbows and my shoulders a little bit of a break, and if I didn't progress dramatically in those areas, I'd be okay, although they have improved since the Arnold. So now, after some time passed, after the Arnold, I got back into a normal split where I'm hitting my whole body. What I do now is a 4-day split. I do legs, shoulders and tries, back, buys, and chest. So it's 4 days my whole body. I take a day off and I repeat. So in 10 days, I'm hitting everything twice. So throughout the month, I'm getting more workouts than if it was a split of just a 7-day split.
All right. Now, when you work out, do you actually change your sets and reps every few weeks to shock the body? Or do you think that's necessary, or just the fact that you're going up in weight the next week is good enough of a shock for you to
Well,
grow?
the only time you're going to be shocking the body is when the body's accustomed to what you're doing. If the body's never accustomed and you're pressing and pushing hard, you're never going to be accustomed. You haven't adapted, so there will be no shock. I train by feel nowadays. I mean, I'm training 24 years now. When I was younger, I used to write everything down. I used to jot it. And there had been years where I even did the same exact workout week after week and made sure I went heavier or did an extra rep or two. I believe in blunt force trauma. I believe in warming up and going extremely heavy. Acclimating, doing one acclimation set, meaning 1 rep or 2 reps at your working weight. So if you guys are benching 225 and that's your max, most of you pyramid up to 225. And there's nothing wrong with pyramiding, there's nothing wrong with drop setting. All techniques have a time and place in training and you can benefit from it. But when you pyramid, you weaken yourself. So 135, 155, 185, 205, and then people end up at 225. Might be more sets, might be less, but that's a pyramid. So what I try to do is warm up. I'll do 2, even 3 sets if necessary of a warm-up weight. And warm-up weight is usually around 50% of your working weight. If I'm gonna do 225, I'll take 80% to 85% of that weight and I'll do 1 rep. Why? Because you can't go from 50 pounds to 150 pounds. You need your nervous system to be ready. So that 1 rep lights up my nervous system and says, we have a heavy load coming. And then I start with the heavy weight and I don't count those sets and I'll do 3 to 4 sets of that weight. And I used to do this religiously, and I was doing 4 to 6 reps. I did that for years. That's really how I built my frame. Nowadays, 4 to 6 reps for me would be very, very heavy, and it would be a little bit dangerous. Right. So I don't train like that anymore, but I still do implement the jumping up. So I warm up, and then I'll go heavy. But I mainly train by feel. I got out of hand a little bit the past year or 2 competing, trying to be the best in the world, and more is better mentality, and sometimes I would lose track and I'm like, wait a minute, I just did so many exercises. So lately, the past few weeks, I've been doing a lot of rehab, I've been feeling great. I pulled back on my volume and I've been implementing that. So for chest, for instance, today, I started with dumbbell flies.
Right.
I did 2 sets of 40 pounds and 50 pounds for about 15 to 20 reps.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to 70s and then jumped to 90s. I did 90-pound dumbbell flies for 10 to 12 reps, 3 sets. From there, I went to incline dumbbells. I worked up to 140-pound dumbbells, and then I did a hammer press. I was done. That was it. So if you have very, very intense workout, blunt force trauma, you don't need volume. If you guys are training 6-7 exercises for a given muscle, you're most likely not at 100% in any of those sets, because we can all train for 2, 3, 4 hours. I can last training for 4 hours, but the intensity only lasts for about 15, 20-minute window.
How does one train if there's asymmetry? So let's say, me personally, I have my left bicep isn't as big as the right bicep. So how do you go about that? Do you do more sets for one bicep, or do you do less volume for the other one? How do you get that symmetry?
Well, first of all, no one is perfectly symmetrical. To the eye, you might not notice it, but no human being is 100% perfectly symmetrical. If it's noticeable, first you have to see if there's an issue. An injury, an impingement, nerve damage, that's first and foremost. If it's nothing big, if it's not a serious injury, and it's just maybe you're a righty and you didn't adequately train the left side, free weights. Don't use bars, don't use machines. Because if you use a Smith machine and you press more with this arm, that bar is gonna go up. But if you're using dumbbells, this one's not gonna go up. So a lot of free weights. You shouldn't have to do more reps for that arm, the weaker arm. It should catch up, because if you're doing 40 pounds for 10, and that's a stronger arm, you're gonna be struggling 40 pounds for 10 on this one. Right. If you get the 40 for 10 here, week after week, it'll catch up.
Makes sense.
The only way it won't is if you do 60 pounds for 10 on that one, and then you do 40 for 10 on this one.
Correct.
But if it's not catching up, I'm talking about, 4 or 5 months after the first year of training, then there's an issue. There's an underlying issue that you need to get checked out and possibly do therapy for. And it might not be at the point of origin. A lot of times our bicep hurts, and we're like, oh, what's wrong with my bicep? What's wrong with my bicep? What do I do for my bicep? And that's not the way the human body works. You may have an injury in your deltoid, your shoulder, your neck. The way the human body works is if one part is injured, you don't just fall on the floor and become paralyzed. The other parts of the body will pick up the slack. So a lot of times you might tweak something on your right side, your hamstring, and your left hip will hurt like 3 weeks later. So you got to think like that.
Okay, so now I'm going to go into a little bit of the diet aspect. How much protein do you think someone needs, and how often should what's the meal frequency someone should be having, and what do you think someone can actually absorb in one meal? Is that 30-35 gram per meal legit, or do you need more, can you absorb more protein, I mean?
Well, I like 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. I think 2 is excessive. It's pushing it, and it puts a lot of strain on your digestive system and the body, breaking down the protein. Not even getting into the conversation of the sources of animal protein. Animal protein in America these days has a lot of toxins in it. Meal timing, the whole eating small meals 5-6 times a day has been disproven. If it fits your macros, for instance, not eating unhealthy, but that type of eating and dieting and other research has shown that if you consume all your calories within 1 sitting or 2 sittings versus 6, it doesn't make a difference on your metabolism. Why do I continue to eat every 3 hours? Frankly, I'm starving. Okay. What I've noticed, when I'm in prep, I don't cheat at all, but what I've noticed normally is if someone gets really, really hungry, they end up making bad choices and they overeat.
Correct.
But for regular people, I don't recommend eating every 3 hours. If you're not a competitive bodybuilder, have a normal life. I believe in intermittent fasting, and I believe in ignoring hunger, especially if you're not trying to be a performance athlete. If you're just trying to be healthy and stay lean, hunger is a defense mechanism of the early humans. Your body doesn't know there's a refrigerator and a McDonald's within 10 feet, so it gives you that feeling of hunger saying, go find food. So meal frequency and timing, I don't think is as important as I did when I was younger, because we have studies now showing that it really doesn't matter as much. Now, portion size, I think, matters. I rather break down, if I'm eating 250, 300 grams of protein, that's a lot of protein. I rather break it down feed it to myself periodically throughout the day, rather than big portions in maybe 2 sittings, and also from different sources of protein, different animal protein, egg whites, chicken breasts, steak, salmon, turkey, whatever. You absorb better than eating the same source 6 times a day. And also, I believe you'll absorb more if you're eating smaller portions than having like 70, 80, 90, 100 grams of protein in one sitting. It's a heavy load. It's difficult to really digest and absorb. And again, it's difficult to digest. You're putting a lot of strain in your stomach, and also your stomach will protrude. So you guys ever notice if you go have a burger and fries and a slice of cake and a Coke, your stomach protrudes. So if you keep doing that, the body is elastic, so is the stomach. The stomach will stretch out. Look at a woman's belly when she gets pregnant. It stretches out to here. So I think keeping the hunger down and keeping cravings down and keeping the stomach down, it's good to keep portion sizes small. At least for me, that was key. That really makes a big difference.
Now, you just mentioned how you like to have different animal sources of protein. Do you think if someone has the same source of protein on a daily basis, they can get a food allergy? Or for some people, they just find it convenient having chicken every single day. Should they be switching it up? Or, I mean,
I don't think you can form, I might be mistaken, I don't think you can form a food allergy just by eating a food too much.
Okay.
I think if you're allergic to something, you're allergic to it. The more you eat it, the worse it'll get. Chicken is a big part of our diet. So even I'm saying switch up the protein sources, I predominantly have chicken. What can you substitute for chicken? Turkey breast, lean pork. But I'm not gonna have red meat 3-4 times a day because it's too much fat. It's calorically dense. I'm not gonna have salmon 2-3 times a day. I'm not gonna have dark chicken meat like thigh and leg. I wish I could, I love that. But so I'm having maybe 3 chicken meals, 1 steak meal, 1 salmon meal. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I recommend switching up the sources, but if you're digesting chicken good, if you're digesting turkey good, that's your main protein source, that's fine. You throw in 1 egg white meal, you throw in 1 steak meal, whatever the case may be. But I mean just trying to change it up. Not every single meal can't be different. If that was the case, I wouldn't be able to have chicken 3 times a day.
Right. Right. Now, for your clients, when you work with a client, do you actually check their blood group or their blood type to see what foods might fit them, or is that completely irrelevant?
I don't know if it's irrelevant or not. I personally don't. Not everybody has the means to go out and get their blood type and do the genetic testing. You're referring to the genetic testing.
Because I saw a little test.
It might be good. I'll be honest with you. I don't have experience with it. They say they check you to see if any of you guys aren't familiar with it, to see what kind of foods like your ancestors ate that absorb better for you, and you're going to be the most optimal performing on these foods.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean it's definitely possible. For me personally, it's been through trial and error.
Okay.
Like in prep, towards the end, I eat a lot of vegetables, and I realized that my stomach was always bloated. It always hurt. It was crampy, and it was because I was having a lot of onions. I was having a lot of onions. I was having cauliflower, broccoli. So now I cut those out. I have some onions, but predominantly I have squash, zucchini, and I have spinach, sauteed spinach. I have broccoli rabe and some onions as well. And as I get close to the show, if I increase more, I keep it with spinach and zucchini. It's just easier on the stomach. So when you're eating the way we eat consistently all the time, you kind of figure out, hey, there's something going on. You cut one thing out, and if it goes away, it's that, you stay away from it.
Right, okay. Now, you also mentioned about meal frequency, and one topic, a question I found was a lot of bodybuilders, they tend to compete even during the months of Ramadan. So I'm not sure what the eating window is, but how would you recommend a bodybuilder goes around that?
Well, the thing with Ramadan, for you guys that don't know, is a religious fasting for people that are Muslim, Islamic fasting. I think a lot of people hype it up or get a little bit too confused. It's kind of, you can benefit a lot from that. There's a lot of health benefits to fasting. Intermittent fasting is fasting for 14, 16, 18 hours. So as long as you're getting your calories in, it's fine. Obviously, it's a little bit more hard because you're not getting in calories when you're active. People are not allowed to eat during the day from sunrise to sunset. So those are the times where they're working and they're doing stuff. But if you just, it's mind over matter. If you, once the hunger comes in the morning, you ignore it, it goes away. You know, Ramadan is just fasting for a period of hours, but they're still eating in a 24-hour period. There's people that fast for 7 days. There's people that fast for 30 days. They get health benefits, they get mental clarity. There's a guy that fasted, it's a documented study. This is not healthy, but he fasted for 365 days. He was clearly overweight, so he only had water and multivitamin. So the people that are fasting for Ramadan, if they're in prep, they're at a caloric deficit. If they're not, they're off season. Just make sure to get the calories that you need in the window that you can eat. So when the sun sets, you eat, you know, and then the conversation of food portion goes out the window because you're not going to stay up all night.
Right.
If you stay up all night and sleep all day, then there's no issue. It's not difficult. For the people that have normal lives, they have to be up during the day and working. So they're going to eat one huge meal, go to sleep, and then wake up before sunset and have another meal. And those 2 meals are going to basically have their caloric needs. If you have your caloric need, for instance, let's say your baseline is 3,000 calories to maintain this body weight. If you eat those in those 2 meals, you're not going to lose weight.
Right.
You're getting in the calories. Calories in versus calories burned.
Right. Okay. Now, what do you suggest someone looks for in their first coach? How should someone pick their first coach?
The way someone should pick their first coach is educate themselves first. If you don't know shit about a topic, how are you going to choose a teacher that knows something about a topic? Do a lot of research. You know, I don't know what it is with some people these days. Everybody just wants an easy way out. Listen, I can only tell you guys what I've learned in my own experience. I read a lot. There was no YouTube, there was no Instagram, there was none of this. The guys I looked up to, I never heard them speak, I never met them, I couldn't send them a DM. So I researched and read for about 15 years. I learned a lot, I trial and error, I taught myself. You got guys working out 6 months, they want to do shows, they need a coach because they have no clue, you know, what they're doing. Right. My advice would be to do a lot of research. There's a lot of free stuff online about dieting and nutrition. Learn a good amount, and then ask the person you're going to use as a coach. Ask them some questions. Ask them some questions you know the answers to that might be a little bit tough, a little complicated, but they're important to know regarding the human body in a caloric deficit, getting ready for competition, and see how they conduct themselves, see how they answer the questions. That's the best advice I could get. But you have to understand, there's so many coaches out there nowadays. Everyone's a self-proclaimed coach. Why? Supply and demand. Bodybuilding has become more mainstream than it was 20 years ago. There's more men's physique competitors, there's more classic physique competitors, there's more bikini competitors. More competitors, not everybody did what I did, 20 years of studying. They need assistance. They need assistance, more coaches. Right. So, you know, just pick and choose wisely. The smarter you are, the smarter your coach will be, because you're not going to settle for somebody that doesn't know much. But if you don't know anything, anything is going to sound right.
I agree. Okay, next question I had was, how do you go about peak week training, and is there a specific depletion workout that someone should be doing during that week?
People think they're going to magically turn into a prince when they're really a frog 2 weeks out. Peak week, I don't even like the sound of it. Listen, if you get shredded to the bone, then you can talk about trying to peak correctly. Most people are not shredded. It doesn't make a difference what you do. When you're really, really lean, you hold less water. So if you guys want to, everyone asks me how to get dry, and I look at their pictures, no one's ripped. The leaner you are, the drier you'll be. Women hold more water than men, and they're softer because they have a higher body fat. So body fat and water is very related. Get in shape, get shredded, be ready for a show 2 weeks out. What you're trying, I can't tell anyone what to do for peak week because every single person's different, and every prep is different. Every prep I've done something different, especially considering that I have to make weight. You know, it depends where your body's at. Sometimes I weigh a little too much, sometimes I'm right at the weight. So what you really want to do in peak week is you want to be as dry and full as possible the day of the show. So the reason people do like everyone does carb depletion workouts. Right. How many of those people know what a carb depletion workout's for? How many of you really know why you carb deplete? If I'm trying to be as full as I can be on Saturday, why am I going to deplete carbs? Depleting carbs makes you flat. Why would you do that? The reason is that there's an enzyme in the muscles that monitors how much glycogen you can hold. And when you carb deplete, it doesn't realize that you're not eating carbs. It just thinks there's no glycogen present. So it allows, it kind of opens the doors. It's almost like a security guard. It allows for more glycogen to come to the muscle. So once you do carb up, technically, if all went well, you can hold more muscle glycogen on Saturday than you held all year round. Right. Because of the deficit, because of the carb depletion, your body is going to overcompensate and hold a lot more carbs in the muscle.
Right.
That's why bodybuilders carb deplete. Now, water and sodium is a huge factor in dryness, subcutaneous water, and muscle fullness. Getting this right is a science. There's no protocol you guys can read out there. And that's another thing about coaches that I don't like. They give that last week protocol and they just email it and say, okay, see you later.
Yes.
You have to feed off the person. You have to see what their body's telling you. Your body speaks to you from the mirror and the scale, but you have to speak its language. Obviously, it doesn't speak English. So, if you cut water completely, if you cut sodium completely, most of the time you'll never get full and you'll look soft and mushy because water and sodium is needed for the muscle to be full.
So since we're talking about peak week, I know you're very creative when it comes to prep and your diet. People like using artificial sweeteners for cravings. Is there a certain artificial sweetener that someone should stay away from? Does it bloat you, like sucralose, stevia?
Well, artificial sweeteners are not healthy, first of all, right? They're artificial. Stevia is natural. There's a few different ways of answering this, because if you're having an artificial sweetener like aspartame that's a chemical and it's not healthy, and you're looking great, and you don't have any inflammation, you don't have any stomach issues, can you keep it into the day of the show? Sure. I've had artificial sweetener into the day of the 2 days before the show, and I've cut it out completely. I do believe that it can cause some inflammation. I do believe having that crisp, dry, transparent look really comes from nothing processed and artificial. Stevia is natural, right? It's not artificial like aspartame, sucralose. But another thing to think about is that a lot of studies have shown that your body does not know that it's an artificial sweetener. Your body tastes sweetness and it releases insulin. That's not a good thing. So you want to avoid insulin spikes and releasing insulin throughout the day when you're in prep, because you can store fat. So if you're constantly triggering your body to produce insulin because you're having tons of diet soda, that's not ideal. I love diet soda, and in prep, if I have a 2-liter diet soda, I drink the whole thing. So I stopped buying diet soda a couple of years ago. What I do is I buy naturally flavored seltzer from Trader Joe's, from Fairway. It's got great flavors, but it's not sweet, and I add stevia to it. And during my prep, that's what I consume. Or I just put branched chains in the seltzer, and it tastes great because they're flavored.
Right.
Towards the last week, I always limit sweeteners and I take them out. I just want my stomach and my body as clean and pure as possible.
Okay. So you would cut that out as you get closer to your show, basically?
If someone's going to cut it out, I would cut it out a minimum of a week or more before. Okay. But listen, it gets tough, when you're not eating anything and what you're really enjoying is a coffee with some sweetener, or if you guys YouTube Arash Rahbar Italian Ice, I make a mean Italian ice. So, if you're using the artificial sweetener and you look dry and you look good and you look full, don't change much. I'm a big advocate of not changing things. If you're doing XYZ and you look great 2 weeks out, don't change it. I see people in the gym, they look phenomenal 2 weeks out of a show. Then I see them the day of the show, they look like crap. And it's because peak week, everything changes. And if you're not, if you're eating rice and chicken and vegetables and steak for 4 months, what do you think's gonna happen when you start eating Pop-Tarts and cereals and all this stuff? Some people are okay with it, but most people don't look good on that stuff. Right. Listen, just wait another 24 hours, eat the junk after your show. I would carb up on foods that have worked throughout your prep and that you've carved up on your high carb days, and your body's used to digesting. When people are on extremely low carb diets or even keto diets, the body doesn't produce certain enzymes that break down carbohydrates. So the mechanics in the stomach are not the same as when you're consuming carbohydrates. So a guy that's on super low carb or a keto diet is not doesn't have the need to have the enzyme in the stomach present to break down carbohydrates. And then all of a sudden, they introduce like 700 grams of carbs within a few hours, and mainly from processed carbs and junk food.
Right.
And then you get these stomachs that are protruded and bloated, and people think it's from other things, but a lot of time it's from that.
Now, since we're talking about peak week and the show, I know you experimented recently with a few different tans. When you look for what color, or how do you know what color you should be looking for yourself?
I've always used one tan, and it doesn't matter what tan you use. I mean, you don't want some low budget shitty company. I always use Liquid Sun Rays. They're very good, but I've had good color with them and bad color with them. So what am I saying? It's not them, it's not their color. Most of the time when you see guys, amateur ranks, and even in the pro ranks that have bad color, it's their own fault. You have to prep your skin. You know, basically when you see guys that are blotchy like camouflage, it's because their skin was dry. Last few weeks of the show, every night, apply a ton of moisturizer. If your skin is dry, it will not absorb the tan. And now your skin is not evenly dry. There's some areas that absorb, some areas that don't. That's where you get the camouflage. Moisturize every single day the last few weeks of the show. Exfoliate the last few weeks of the show. The day of the show, follow the protocol that they give you. I've always used baking soda and Suave natural soap. Why? Baking soda, and you mix it with soap, it becomes a rough exfoliant, and it also balances the pH of your skin. Don't overdo it because baking soda will dry you out. But you do that, you exfoliate the morning of the spray tan, so like 7-8 hours before. No deodorants, no moisturizer, no cologne, nothing. And then before I go, I sweat a little throughout the day, so I'll just rinse with water, air dry, let the water go into my pores, don't towel dry, and I go get a tan. If overnight it doesn't absorb well, or I get blotchy or I sweat, I'll rinse. I don't wash myself, I just rinse, get the excess that didn't get absorbed off, and go spray again in the morning. But when you see guys with bad color, it's usually because they didn't prep their skin correctly.
That's interesting. Okay. The other question I had was, how would you define muscle maturity? What exactly is muscle maturity, and how long do you think it does take someone for that to show up?
Muscle maturity is a look. There's no gauge in measuring muscle maturity. You have 22-year-olds that look jacked and huge and detailed and amazing, and that's just genetic. They've progressed at a fast rate. But when we say muscle maturity, like, oh, this young bodybuilder looks amazing, but he doesn't have that maturity yet, right. The muscle isn't as dense. It's not as detailed. Sometimes the muscle's just puffed up. It's really, really big from rapid growth. And in those times, usually they're softer looking muscles. You look at Big Ramy the first few years, he was enormous, he was tremendous. And even when he was conditioned, the muscle didn't have that much detail, didn't have refinement to it. Fast forward, now he's starting to look more mature, more detailed, more chiseled. So not only do you have the size of the muscle, but you have more detail, more graininess, and over time when you train and diet, every time you get your body fat lower, it's easier to maintain a lower body fat. So you'll see a lot of guys, a lot of bodybuilders in their 40s and 50s just lean all year round. It's easier to stay lean after years and years of dieting, getting your fat cells to decrease and eliminate and increase your muscle mass.
Wow, okay. That's pretty much what I had. Last time was about 45 minutes, but this time I'm gonna keep it nice and brief.
Good.
Arash is on prep, so gonna let him get back to his diet and training.
Yeah, man. One thing I'll leave you guys with, I have a lot of you come up to me in person and will ask me like, hey, any words of wisdom? You know, I'm doing a show, and I feel like everyone's like expecting me to say, like, give them the secret, you know? And it just comes down to being a dog. And what do I mean by a dog? Being consistent, doing the same thing. Dogs like schedules. If you guys have dogs at home, you know your dog likes to wake up at the same time, likes to go for a walk and take a shit at the same time, and likes to be fed at the same time. And it might sound boring, but that's what's required. You need to work your ass off, and you need to envision. You guys that follow me know I'm big on law of attraction, envisioning, manifesting. Whatever we constantly focus on, constantly think about is what we get. It's our reality. But when you guys are training, For a show, you can't expect to just, oh, well, I'm training, I'm doing an hour cardio, and I'm dieting, so I should look amazing. That's just going through the motions. You need to give it your all. You need to always be thinking, how can I train harder? How can I make this exercise more difficult? If my chest is weak, why is it weak? Don't just say it's genetic. Genetic capability is very, very important. If you don't have good genetics, you cannot be Mr. Olympia. You will never be Mr. Olympia. But that doesn't mean you can't be the best version of you. Everyone can be huge. Everyone can be ripped. Everyone can be the best version of them. Okay? If you're super tall or you're super short, you can't change that. But you can be the best version of you. It might not be adequate to be the best in the world or be Mr. Olympia, but there's no excuse. A lot of people say, well, I don't have, Mr. Olympia's genetics, so whatever, I won't give it my all. Give it your all. I didn't know my genetics. I have good genetics, but there's different types of good genetics. I have the capability of getting large, and I have good symmetry and shape. But I wasn't one of those guys that was just muscular without lifting, or some guys get really lean. Some guys train for 6 months and they're just shredded and they get jacked. That wasn't the case with me. Mine was more like a hidden gem. I had no clue what my genetics were. I trained my ass off for years before I started looking like, oh wow. I see a lot of young guys now in the NPC competing that blow me away from when I was 20 years old. I didn't look like holy shit or impressive till like 10 years. So yes, I have good genetics, but I would never have known if I didn't train my ass off. I worked really, really, really hard, and I trained for 20 years before I stepped on stage. Mm-hmm. And that was just a combination of me being a perfectionist, and also I wasn't doing it to do a show. A lot of you guys, ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Is it for Instagram fame? Is it to get a contract or supplement contract or to be on the cover of a magazine? If that's the reason, give it a go. I'm not for that. I just did it out of passion and love, and I ended up here. And now it's, I love it and I'm very happy, and I wouldn't change it for the world, but why you do what you do is very important. So keep that in mind, guys. Train hard, research, read, question yourselves, question people that are trying to teach you stuff. Be consistent. If you love something, you will work hard at it. If you love something, you will learn about it. If something means a lot to you, you'll go out of your way to research and put in the time. If you guys put 30 minutes to an hour every day, everyone has that time. Everyone's got hours throughout the day that they waste. If you spend 30 to 60 minutes a day studying the topic, whatever it may be, mechanics, dieting, whatever it may be, every single day, in 1 year, you're gonna be an expert. It's gonna be like you went to a university. If you spend time watching YouTube videos, researching, reading medical journals, if it has to do with training and dieting, reading documented, by other professionals, documented papers, you're going to become a professional, whatever it is you're researching. So allocate the time to whatever it is you're doing if you love it and it means a lot to you. Till next time, guys, thank you, Kabir.
Thank you, Arash.
Always a pleasure, brother.
Same here.